Malaysia, a country was known for its economic growth and stability, is now facing a looming debt crisis.
Peningkatan hutang negara mencecah 1.5 trilion ringgit.
Jika hutang dan liability kita mencecah 1.5 trilion atau 81% KDNK.
How did this happen, and what can be done to prevent a financial crisis? Malaysia experienced rapid economic growth under the leadership of Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad. Meanwhile, in 1997 until 1998, the Asian financial crisis hit Malaysia hard, causing its currency to plummet and its stock market to crash.
Ringgit yang selesa diparas 2 hingga 2.5 berbanding dolar pada awal tahun lalu tiba-tiba menjunam.
The government had to spend billions of dollars to prop up the currency and rescue failing banks and businesses. After the crisis, Malaysia implemented a series of economic reforms aimed at reducing debts and strengthening the financial sector. Today, Malaysia's debt to GDP ratio surpassed 60%, the highest it has been in over a decade. This was due in part to the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused a sharp economic contraction and forced the government to increase spending to support businesses and households.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone, my name is Farah Wardina, your host for today. In this documentary, we will figure out about the Malaysia's debt crisis which affected the Malaysia's economic growth. Today, we will explore the expert view about the root cause of Malaysia's financial debt and the possible solutions to avoid a financial crash. Together with us, Dr. Nurhayati Abdul Rahman. Can you introduce yourself and your involvement in this economic field?
Okay, my name is Nurhayati Abdul Rahman. I am the Senior Lecturer of Economics in the Faculty of Business and Management from UiTM Melaka, campus Bandaraya Melaka. So, I have been in economics field since 12 to 15 years ago. So, my degree, my master and my PhD are all about economics, and most of my major fields that I'm interested in on the public finance, government spending, and government debt.
Okay, Doctor, what is actually a national debt? From where this debt comes from?
Basically, national debt is debt lah, the debt which is borrowed by our government. And the government, when they don't have enough money, they can finance their financing or their expenditures by using debt. So basically, if we go basic to the basic economics, we have revenues, government have revenues, they also have expenses. So their revenues can come from many sources like tax, indirect taxes, non-tax revenues and others. And based on the revenues that they have, they can project how much spending that they want to spend. If the spending is more than the revenue, then it's what we call budget deficit during that time. So they can finance those deficit by using debt financing. Okay, and where it comes from, normally in Malaysian perspective, they can gather their sources of debt in terms of bonds. They can issue bonds to obtain additional financing for certain projects or for comprehensive projects and so on. So that is one of the ways in how they can use it. Or they also can borrow money from the banks, from the public, through various instruments that they have.
Okay, Doctor, can you give your opinion on the root cause of Malaysian debt crisis and the current situation of the debt?
Okay, so we need to define whether we are having crisis or not yet. Actually, we still haven't go towards that crisis, because debt crisis is a situation whereby a country is not able to sustain in paying back the debt. But as of now, we're still able to pay the debt. Therefore, we still haven't go towards the debt crisis. But what are the root causes of why we have huge amount of debt now? So among the root causes, one would be the external environment that we are not able to control. For instance, when we had COVID-19 pandemic last 2.5 years, the government need to inject a lot of money to make sure that our citizens survive by injecting a lot of subsidies and so on. That is one of the reasons why the amount of expenditures going up very rapidly. So when the amount of expenditures going up and the government are not able to increase the government revenues through issuance of more taxes and so on, that's why they have to borrow more. Number two, apart from the pandemic, because of the climate change around the world, whereby a lot of agricultural products are being controlled by certain countries, and that push up the prices in the world market, especially prices of the agricultural products like wheat. So those things will push up the inflation in the world. That's what we call as cost push inflation. So when we have cost push inflation around the world, we also need to embrace with those inflation. So like it or not, we also have to increase the prices in Malaysia. So when that happened in Malaysia, we don't have enough money to finance. We need to import more of those agricultural products, and that is the reason why we need to incur more debt. Yeah. Number three might be because of the accumulated debts that have been accumulated previously, which still haven't been settled till today. And because if you look at the current scenario, that value is around 1.3 trillion, 1.2 to 1.3 trillion ringgit. It's not million, it's not billion, but it's trillion. So very huge amount. And the debt ratio towards GDP should be within 60 to 65%. But this has increased more than 65%. Because when we add in our liabilities together, it reached more than almost 1.5 trillion ringgit Malaysia. So the accumulated debts that have been accumulated previously and we haven't been able to pay back, those are other reasons. Like we have amount of debt but we don't have enough revenue, so we borrow another money to top up this debt.
From what you have explained before, is Malaysia currently experiencing a debt crisis, and are we in a way to bankruptcy?
Bankruptcy, no. I will say no. Bankruptcy, no. Why? As I mentioned earlier, we haven't go towards debt crisis yet, because debt crisis is a situation whereby we have the debt but we are not able to pay. But now if you look at our budget, based on how much budget that we have allocated around 10 to 15% of the budget for debt service, meaning 10 to 15% of our budget being used to pay the interest of the debt, meaning we still able to pay. When we're still able to pay, then it means that we haven't go towards the debt crisis yet. So the remaining 75-80%, those will be maintained or will be used for operating and development expenditures. But it doesn't mean that we should close our eyes on the debt problem that we have. We still need to tackle those debt, and hopefully the government will be using a lot of other measures to make sure that the debt can be reduced.
In your view, does the lack of transparency and the failure of government controlling the country revenue will lead to the big factor that causes Malaysia's debt to keep rising?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Because transparency is very important, very important. So government need to ensure that whatever that they do, they need to transparent. For instance, when they have been elected as somebody in the country, they need to make sure that they disclose their properties, disclose their assets to the public. The reason being is because they need to ensure transparency, how much they obtain before and after they hold a certain position. Not just that on the politicians, but also on the management level in the government. So how much they spend on this, how much they spend on that, need to be very transparent, especially in terms in parliament and so on. That's why there were cases whereby in the parliament, politicians, this side of politicians said that you need to be transparent, and why certain money have been allocated without their knowings and so on. So need to be transparent, because when you transparent, especially on a big amount, then people will be trusting you. Investors will trust Malaysia. So when investors trust Malaysia, a lot of investors will come in. Foreign direct investment, domestic investment will come in, and economic growth will increase. That's why transparency is very important.
Based on the current situation, what is the possible solution that the government can take now to prevent a financial meltdown? What do you think, Doctor?
Our current situations right now, we are having quite high number of inflation because people are struggling. SMEs are struggling right now. Citizens are struggling right now. One, what they should do, that's number one, targeted subsidy. Give the right subsidy to the right person. Give the subsidies to the specific person. For instance, like what the government is doing right now, tabung haji. Tabung haji, those wealthier people like T20, they might not be obtaining more subsidies anymore. They will not obtain more subsidies to perform Hajj.
Bantuan kewangan haji kepada B40 kita tambah, tapi bagi T20 tidak akan ada lagi tambahan ataupun subsidi daripada kerajaan.
If we look at what the policy of the government right now, they are moving towards targeted subsidy. Targeted subsidies means T20 will not get subsidies anymore. B40 and M40 will get more subsidies. Means they are actually increasing their tax revenue. That is how they increase the tax revenue. They reduce the subsidies of the T20 so that they have ample amount of sources of funds to finance to other things. But second, look at the mega projects that we have. Look at mega projects that we have. Those projects might not be, that is very beneficial. Those projects are very beneficial for long term. Maybe we can get the fruits, can get the benefits after 20, 30 years, but not now. So if we can hold those projects first and look at the foundation at the citizens level, then that will be good. Look at those. And then number three, try to increase more foreign direct investment into the country. Because when we add more, we invite more foreign direct investment into country, it open up a lot of job opportunities to the public. It give more ratings to the country, so the multiplier effects will go further. So when our citizens have more jobs, when overseas investors are good, looking good at us, then we have a lot of opportunities, and our growth will increase. So when our growth will increase, those people who have more income will start paying more to the government in terms of taxes. So we'll have more ample sources of revenues to be allocated to our citizens. So those are the things that I think important that government needs to do, but especially on the targeted subsidy as well as the looking at the priority of the mega projects.
The increase in national debt has now received the attention of Malaysians. We have caught up with a few individuals to get their views on how much the nation's debts affect them today.
Pada pandangan saya lah, isu hutang negara ni kalau tak dikawal akan menjadi bertambah parah lah dari masa ke semasa. Sebagai contoh, kalau kita berbelanja tanpa hemah, mungkin tak mustahil kita punya hutang negara akan melebihi 1.5 trilion. Jadi bagi pandangan saya, langkah berjimat cermat itu perlu. Sebagai contoh, kita kurangkan sikit projek-projek mega agar defisit dapat dikurangkan. Itu yang saya boleh kongsikan, macam mana kita nak mengurangkan hutang negara semakin bertambah.
I think the government needs to do something about it. Well, it doesn't hit me very badly, but I believe it has affected the inflation of the country, but things are getting more expensive, and I think there might be some, correlation between these two.
Well, the debt, it depends on our capability to repay the debt, and also that I think that can be good because when we borrow money for our future, we can invest in development projects and also to spur the economy. However, that if we are unable or we manage to manage the project or the debt well, then we will be in trouble. That depends on the executive body of the country to decide and how to act.
So, the question is Malaysia going to bankruptcy? Taking into Dr. Nohayati's perspective, we can say that Malaysia is still not in the risk of bankruptcy yet because the government still be able to pay the debt. However, our government still has a huge amount of debt that needs to be settled. The future of Malaysia's economy remains uncertain. However, there must be action taken to address the country's debt crisis. It is very crucial for us to keep updated about the economic situation as well as ensuring our leaders to be accountable for every decision and action taken. Will Malaysia be able to avoid bankruptcy? Only time will tell.